Okay, thank you. Uh, Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call a meeting to order. Acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me via Zoom are Kent Seelan and Richard Whitbread. The assessor today is Abhishek Ratan, and the administrative personnel is Phoebe Graywood. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements I made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing, and issues a written order that be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value reclassification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the applications of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 2 through 7 on our docket today. Ms. Graywood, please affirm the assessors and applicant's testimony.
Please state your full name.
Abhishek Ratan.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Ms. Power, please state your full name.
Pradeep Kaur.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Charlebois Page, can you state your full name?
My name is Stephen Charlebois Page.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I notice the assessor, both the assessor and the agent are new to me, so welcome. Our first property today is 225 Vaughan Street. So, Mr. Assessor, you can begin on this property.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. File number 24-2738. Roll number 12093696000. Property address 225 Bond Street. Property owner 225 Bond Limited. The roll year 2025 based on April 1, 2023. Assessed value at $1,282,000. It's a medical's office clinic. Beginning on the page 2, we have some photographs of the subject property. The property is located between Portage and Vaughan, or we can say it's on Vaughan and St. Mary's, between Vaughan and St. Mary's. There was a recent sale that was conducted on June 12th of 2023. It's post-reference sale, but it's a sale between two unknown parties. It's an arm's length sale. Moving forward to page 6, we have some information on our subject property. We can see the leasable area of the subject property ranges from 328 square feet to 1,806 square feet because of multiple tenants spaces in it. And the average rent generated as per the city model is $12.46 for the space. On page 5, I have some comparables. If we focus on the comparables from comparable number 9 to 12, I have a sample space from 510 square feet to 2,000 to 1,200 square feet. The average of that sample size comes at 1,275. Now, moving forward to page number 6 again, since this subject property suffers a huge amount of vacancy, we have a vacancy rate of 22% already set in our model to take that in account. We have the shortfall at $10 per square feet with an expenses of 3%. Now, there's a huge risk involved in this property due to its vacancy and not getting leased out. We have a cap rate of 9%. Putting up all these in factors, we have an estimated value of $1,282,000. There are some permits placed in to change this property type to a multifamily apartment building. Those permits were applied are for 2024 and going forward.
Okay, I would caution about any post-reference material. We're dealing with the physical asset in April 1st, 2023.
Moving forward from page 10 to page 14, I have the income and expense mailers, and going forward, I have all the photographs of my comparables. So to conclude, we would like the board to confirm the 2025 assessment value of $1,282,000. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several. Mr. Sesser, is the income value on in your presentation today model generated?
Yes, please.
Was a review of the actual vacancy over the past 5 years completed in advance of your filings?
Yes, we have reviewed the vacancy for this property, and we taken into consideration for 22%.
Okay, so to your rental comparables, are you aware that the lease deals on page 5 of your brief are all older leases?
Yes, I do.
Did you review any newer leases?
We didn't have any of the newer leases for all my comparables right now, so therefore we had to choose the older leases for the properties.
Do you think in the case of medical office, and I think this will be a question that's relevant to a number of the files today, do you think when medical office is being reviewed, it might be wise to look at newer office deals in the immediate vicinity than to do a citywide review of old lease deals?
I don't think that would be accurate.
Sorry, so you don't agree that that perhaps the lower end of the office range in the downtown core might present a better comparable than, let's say, a standalone dentist office or a dentist office in a retail plaza? Is that what you're saying?
There weren't enough comparables for in the downtown area to include in my analysis, so that's why I had to increase the proximity for my comparables. So I had to look around the city for finding good comparables.
Okay, so you didn't contemplate other types of tenancies in your evaluation. To you, it was worthwhile prioritizing medical and dental tenancies, even if they were in, I guess, anchored retail assets.
Yes, due to the shortage of comparables in the downtown area, so I had to increase my proximity for that.
Okay, thank you. So you said you reviewed the vacancies. You're aware that the property ranged between 36.7% vacant to 100% vacant between 2020 to 2024.
Yes.
Does that change your opinion on the 22% vacancy that's been applied?
To the maximum, we can apply for 22%. If we go above 25%, the income income model doesn't work for our valuation. So we have it at 22% right now, and it's not for one certain period of time. It is a build-up, so it's like 22% this year, 22% next year. So we are gonna, there could be chances that the vacancy can fall anytime, so we are not gonna change the vacancy right away. So it's a building process for the vacancy when it comes to it.
To be clear, you're saying that 22% is the maximum that the model would apply. Is that correct?
Yes, and we would support that.
Okay. So the highest stabilized vacancy for a property that's 100% vacant is 22% in your opinion. Okay.
Yes.
So on page 10 of your report, there's the income and expense statement, I believe, for one of the last years there. Did you note that the owner is not able to recover utilities and property tax, that they're under recovering?
Yes, I see that.
Okay. And I guess just to circle back on those comparables that you provided, are you aware that several of your comparables are in newer built retail assets?
Well,
And I could point to one if you'd like.
so if we look at our comparables from comparable number 5 till comparable number 12, it's all built around 1970s. There are three comparables that were built into 2012. All others are in the older buildings.
So with reference to comparable 1 and comparable 13, I believe both of those are in retail assets. And with comparable 13, I believe that's an anchored retail asset.
But that's
sorry, do you find those comparable to a largely vacant office tower in the downtown core?
no. My main focus was to find out the medical clinic within the city. Since I was able to find the downtown, like I answered before, like I couldn't find any of the comparables in the downtown area for the medical office clinic, so I had to increase the proximity area for my comparables.
Do you think that medical office, whether it's standalone or if it's a office tower, do you think that other tenancies could fill those spaces when they go vacant?
They might have to do some kind of alterations in it, but I'm not 100% sure if they can or they cannot.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Seelan, questions?
Yes, can you explain the choice of 9% for a cap?
The 9% cap rate was chosen to account for the risk factors that the building is facing right now. It accounts for vacancy most commonly and the utilities not being covered because the owner is not able to like lease out the property space. And that's the whole reason we have the vacancy at 22% for the subject property.
Okay, that's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread.
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, just on your comparables again, and I've heard your answer that it was done by necessity, but I know 400 Taché, that's right across the street from St. Boniface Hospital. Would that affect the rates that you can get on leases in that sort of property?
Mr. Hart, I would suggest there shouldn't be any case in that scenario because the whole property is used for medical clinics there.
Yes, okay. All right. I guess I have no more questions then. So, Mr. Applicant, you can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subject property is a Class C or D medical office in the downtown core of Winnipeg. Subject property is improved with a 17,266 square foot, 6-story office or medical office building that was built in 1964. I did want to touch on the permit. Mr. Chair, I know you noted it as post-reference, but just to draw relevance to the potential further use and potential supplementary that might affect this property, I won't drone on about it. The current assessment is $1,282,000 in the commercial classification. So I have set aside the cost approach and the sales comparison approach and have focused on the income. I have prepared my income value, and I'd like to start on my rental inputs, which are on page 11 of my report. So this is a study of office tenancies in Class C and D buildings, older buildings in the core. It represents the bottom of the range, which would suit this property that's vacant and at the end of its economic life. So this produced a median rent of $11. Moving into my vacancy, this building, like I had said, has ranged from 36.7 to 100% vacancy from 2020 to 2024. The building's been 100% vacant since approximately 2021, to my knowledge. I applied a $10 shortfall, 3% non-recoverable, which is both in line with the assessor's value. And for my capitalization rate, I've applied an 8.50% in this case. The factors in my capitalization rate were the age, the building nearing its economic life, and requiring substantial investment to further the asset. My reconciliation of value, which is on page 13 of my report, indicates a revised value of $697,000 rounded. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hunt. So, Mr. Applicant, I would like you to go on page 11, please.
Page 1 of my brief, you said?
Page 11.
11. Yep.
So these are the rent comparables, correct?
Correct.
So where exactly are they on, like Broadway, Fourth, Lombard, and Market? Where exactly I'm looking at them?
Where are they located? These are Class C and D offices in downtown Winnipeg.
But would then they have some kind of like property address if I had to make sure if the leases are correct or the area spaces are correct, some kind of that information in order to verify?
Yeah, I could have included certainly those office, but those are arm's length tenancies in the downtown core, and they represent the bottom of the range. I don't think my and your rent is that far off compared to what the model has put on this property. I think it's largely vacancy, but yes, they could have had the address put on there, sure.
Okay. And are any of these being used as an like a medical clinic or medical centers right now, or are they all like office spaces?
As you noted in your presentation, the prevalence of medical office tenancies that are relevant to the valuation date of April 1st, 2023 are limited. It's my opinion that these comparables in the immediate vicinity at the bottom end of the rental range for office are going to represent a way better indicator of market lease value. So
you suggest that medical clinic shouldn't be compared to a medical clinic right now?
I'm suggesting that these at $11 are pretty close to what the assessed models put on the property, and I think the rental rate that you had assigned based on the comparables in your report was, let me just see, I think you came out with a median of $17.50 a square foot. I think the models got between $11 and $12 just off the top of my head. I came through with $11 based on these office comparables at the bottom end of the range. So I do think that this is giving us a better indication of a market rent for this property, certainly than expanding the vicinity and going to deals from 2013 and 2014 from suburban Winnipeg.
But aren't we talking about the assessment value today, or are we specifically talking about the rent comparables? Because what I'm getting is we are more focused into bringing the rent similar to the assessment side, but we are not looking at the property value.
No, my rents have nothing to do with the assessed value. They're an indication of market value for office in the downtown core. I'm simply saying that they're a better indication of market value, in my opinion, than looking at suburban assets and suburban tenancies and anchored retail properties are not going to provide a strong indication of what you get for rent in this space.
Okay, and you also mentioned this is an office C-class property type, correct?
Sure.
And you have like, when you took out the mean and median, I see that there are office C class, D class, and S class in this, I guess, or office S, I guess.
Yes,
Will this affect the mean and median for the sample size or no?
you're speaking to the leases on page 11.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, all those would be a factor. Yep.
Yes. So, did you try to find out the mean and the median for only office C class properties?
No, I did not.
Okay, so Mr. Board, I actually did that math and I found out if we take out a mean from property 1 and then 3 to 5 and 34 to 38, which are only office C class, which I can see, the mean and the median comes around $14.09.
What was that value?
$14.09.
1409. Okay.
So
As per
I appreciate that math, but I would again look at this and say this property is 100% vacant and likely would be at the bottom end of the range. So, yeah, thank you.
So as per the Mr. Assessor, this reflects a better market rent as per their presentation. But the city of Winnipeg with the assessment department, they only have it as a $12.46. So if we do the, so the so what I would like to say is like the assessed value is kind of fair. Go to their vacancy, it's like 35%, which is an actual vacancy.
Is this a
That's
question?
right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would ask you to state the question.
Yeah, so my question was like, so the vacancy allowance that you put as of 35%, correct?
Yes,
And you tell it as it is 100% vacant, correct?
correct.
Okay, yeah, that
And to add commentary to that, it's not uncommon. The MMB has put a 35% vacancy allowance on properties that are 100% vacant in the past. So I just want to state that the cap of 22% that the assessment model has put out, that's not a widely accepted appraisal standard or the cap based on any standard that I know from the industry. So thank you.
Thank you, that would be all my questions.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread, questions?
You said it's 100% vacant now, it sounds
Yep.
like, but when did the 100% vacancy start?
So, Mr. Chair, I believe based on the information I have at hand, it dwindled from 2021. And I think it was sometime in 2022 that vacancy became 100%. But I do not have the exact date.
But prior to reference date.
Prior to reference date, correct.
Right. And your knowledge of chronic vacancy, what would you say the number of years it had to be chronically vacant before you could move to a 20 to 25 to 30, 35%? How many years should you be looking at?
So, and I think that's difficult to say. And I think that would be at the mindset of an investor at the time period of the valuation date. Couple of years, 2 years of complete vacancy. And then I think it would be disingenuous, Mr. Chair, for me not to mention the fact that when a property is becoming vacant like this, there's always that lens of looking forward of what will this asset become. And there is certainly that mindset of how much money is this going to cost someone to turn this into something that's going to, achieve income in line with market standards. So I would add that at the end is that, a couple of years vacant, but there's also this contemplation of future use. So,
well, and I guess my next question would be then, if it was starting to dwindle off and near the end of its lifespan in 2021, do you know if that conversation was being held or if they were contemplating future use at that time and deciding to leave it vacant purposely because they knew they were going to renovate and change over?
So I won't speak to the owner's mindset because I don't have that information firsthand. But what I will say is this. Based on my general knowledge of the valuation industry is that we've seen a lot of this happening is that with interest rates rising the way they did from 21 to 23, there is a lot of inventory that is sitting because it simply is not cost effective at that time to undertake large scale projects. Now, that's not always true in primary markets, tier one markets like Toronto and Vancouver. You'll see, there would be shovels in the ground, but certainly a hold up in general. So I would say that, once that's completed for assessment purposes, a supplementary assessment, would be issued, and the city would capture any sort of that value. But at this point, in my opinion, this is I'm seeking a shell value here is functionally where I'm going with the 35% vacancy. The building's dwindled down. It's at the end of its economic life. As soon as that turns over, the city would issue a supplementary assessment for, whatever the final product would become.
Do you know if the owners were advertising property for lease in 2021, 22, and up to the reference date? Was that?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Seelan.
Yes, have you inspected this property?
I have not inspected this property.
No. Thank you. That's all. My questions. The rest of my questions have been answered, Mr. Chair.
Yep. All right. And my question was going to be along the same line as Mr. Whitbread's, so it's been asked and answered. So thank you very much. Does either party wish a submission on this, a summary on this property?
No, I don't know.
Submission?
I would take summary, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
So in summary, I would just say that the city did not fully encapsulate the end of the economic life of the building as of April 1st, 2023. I would just say that the lease deals that I've provided represent office space in the immediate vicinity. Some of the rental comparables provided by the city are broad, retail, citywide. I don't find them comparable, especially old 2013 deals, not much relevance to a April 1st, 2023 value. And I would just ask the board to contemplate the shell value considering the state of the building. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We shall move on to 288 Portage. Let me just open the proper files. Okay, Mr. Assessor, on 288 Portage. Or 388, sorry. 388.
File number 24-2789, roll number 1209-362-7000, property address 388 Portage Avenue, property owner Jack's Development Limited. The 2025 assessed value based on a reference date of April 1, 2023 is $7,230,000. The property has been listed as a medical clinic. Moving on to page 2 and 3, I have some photographs of the subject property. The property is located at the intersection of Portage and Edmonton Street. It's in between of Portage and Edmonton Street. There is no recent sale history. Moving on to the page 6, we have the income approach used for the subject property. If we look at spaces, we have it as a storage mezzanine space, which gives it as a rent as $9.24. With a vacancy loss of 15%, we use a shortfall of $10 with a 3% of expense rate and a cap rate of 8.8%. Again, my comparables have a broader view for the proximity area. Reason being, we couldn't find good comparables in the downtown section. Moving forward from page 10 to Well, I have the income and expense mirror filled by the property owner or filled by the property management. And moving forward from page 13 till page 21, I have the photographs of the comparables. So to confirm the board, I would ask them to confirm the 2025 assessment value for $7,230,000. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Assessor, could I just confirm first that the model presented, or sorry, the value presented today was model generated?
Yes,
Did you conduct a review of the actual vacancy over the last 5 years?
I actually looked at it and I found the subject property is almost vacant.
Okay. Are you aware that the lease deals on page 5 of your brief are all older lease deals?
Yes,
Did you review newer lease deals?
I couldn't find them, and that's why we couldn't look at the newer leases.
And again, following in a similar line of questioning, I'll try and be quick, is comparable 1 and 2 you've selected on Lorimer. It's on page 13 of your report, I believe. And going on to page 14, just a visual look at that. Sorry, have you had a chance to inspect the subject property, Mr. Assessor?
No, I haven't inspected the subject property.
Were you able to see the pictures included in my brief or that have been exchanged historically?
Yes, I did.
So looking at page 13 and 14 there, would you suggest that this building is comparable to the subject property?
No, I wouldn't suggest that. The correct comparables that were presented on page 5 represented the market rents if it was used as a medical clinic. But if we switched over to page 6, we can see that the subject property has been already marked as storage space, which drops the rent at $9.60.
Okay, so the rent comparables you provided, you're not relying on, and in many cases, you don't think they're comparable to the subject property. Is that?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll move on from that question. Again, you've reviewed the interior images provided of the subject property.
Yes, I did.
Okay. For your capitalization rate, there's a chart on page 8. Do you know how many medical office sales were included in this study?
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer for that question.
No. Okay. Did you consider the heritage designation on the property when you looked at the capitalization rate or any other factors on the property?
Yes, and that because of the risk factors and the property can't be leased out because of the current condition, we have the cap rate at 8.8%.
Yep.
Is on a higher end, I guess.
Okay. So I guess in your rental analysis, you've chosen to use medical office in suburban Winnipeg over downtown office comparables. Can you indicate for me which section of this chart on page 8 would you be pulling your capitalization rate from?
So currently this has been used as a storage space. So I would go by the industrial, I would say, because it's just like a shelf space, like a warehouse space. So the maximum is at like 7.30. And currently we are at like 8.8, which is maximum.
Sorry, did you say an industrial rent or industrial cap?
Yes, because it's like a storage space. It's being used as a storage space right now.
Okay, nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Seelan, questions?
You said it was almost all vacant. Is it totally vacant, or what percentage of the building is vacant?
It is totally vacant.
I'm sorry,
It is totally vacant.
totally vacant, okay. And, had you inspected this building? I think the applicant just asked, but I just wanted to reconfirm.
No, we did not get a chance to inspect the floor.
Okay. You say you're using an industrial cap because it's being used for storage. Is this being used by tenants for storage, or is this just the building owners, or?
It's like the property has not been renovated. It's not marked as on for lease, so it's currently being marketed as a storage space to lower down the rents and to bring into factor, which is, so if we have the lower rent, it's gonna generate lower value for the subject property.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread, questions?
Yes, my first one, is it a heritage building?
Yes,
Okay. And are there any restrictive covenants on it as a heritage building? Do you know?
no, I don't know about
You
that.
don't know the details. Okay. I heard the evidence that the building has been 100% vacant since about 2021. Is that correct?
Yes,
And yet you're calling it a warehouse. Is it actually being used as a warehouse, or is that a designation you've given it, or a storage space, simply for classification purposes?
we only give it as a storage space to lower down the rents. It's not used as a warehouse. It just have empty office spaces, and that's all in that building right now.
Right, so the building is pretty much vacant.
Yes, it is.
Um, Can you tell me how many years you would take to have a vacant building classed as chronic vacant and go to the 22 or 25%? I've heard both numbers used for vacancy. How many years?
Unfortunately, I don't know about that. I don't want to take a mere guess. But I looked at the pictures presented by the applicant's evidence. It would need some work to be done on it. And I guess that it should be good to lease out. Currently, there are no, it's not being listed for leases.
So, so a 15% vacancy is adequate in your mind after let's go to the reference date, 2 to 3 years of 100% vacancy?
Yes, because the 15% is it's always gets built up, right? So it's not like 15% for this year. So 15% was back in like next previous year, then on to the previous year. So it's like building up stage. So I think 15% is accurate for this property.
Okay. And did I hear you say that you agree that the comps you presented in your evidence are really not good comps to this particular building?
I would say yes, because that's some in the newer facilities,
Yeah.
and it's not in the downtown area. Because we do not have so many medical clinics in downtown area to include for our comparisons.
Mm. That's all. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I've got question, and I'm should have probably asked on the previous property too. The city and the applicant have different square footage leasable areas for this property. A city is 99,000 and change, and the applicant 75,000 and change. Why the difference?
So we come up with our square footages based on the building plans and the building leases that were presented to us in the previous years. I'm unsure how the applicant came up with that number. But
Okay.
for the city, we review the building plans and the leases that were present in previous years.
Okay, so keep that question in mind for the applicant's presentation, and then you can begin, Mr. Applicant.
Mr. Chair, sorry.
Yes,
One more question.
okay.
On your page 1 of your evidence, Mr. Rattan, you have a basement area of 13,774 square feet. Is that a typo or is that an actual number?
That's an actual number. That shouldn't be a typo.
Sorry?
That's an actual number.
Oh, it is. Okay. On a plan of 11,310, does that make sense? I'm trying to understand it. Sorry, it's a little bit confusing for me how you could have a bigger basement area than the plan area. The plan area is typically the floor plan of the building, is it not?
I might have to, I haven't looked at this exactly, so I do not have the correct answer for this right now. I might have to check it. I might have to look into this.
Okay, well, the applicant may be able to help us too when we get there. Thank you.
Okay, now, Mr. Applicant, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have this property as Class C or D office in downtown Winnipeg. This property is was previously municipally addressed as 384 Portage Avenue. This is a grade 3. This property has a grade 3 heritage designation and is known as the Boyd Building. One of the chairs, I believe Mr. Whitbread asked, are there limitations from the city website? I have here that the exterior of the building, its structure, and any listed character defining elements are protected from demolition. It also notes that alterations to these areas require a heritage permit. So the subject property is improved with a 75,700 square foot building. It's a 9-story building that was built in 1911. The current assessment is $7,230,000. So for my presentation today, I've set aside the cost and sales comparison approach, and I've focused in on the income approach to value. On page 12 of my report, you can see my rental inputs. I conducted a separate study of the lower end of the lease range. I've used some larger tenancies in this one compared to the prior property. You get some of those would be larger, multiple floor tenancies. The average and median of those ranging there are 1135 to 1175 a square foot. The subject property is not in a state that's anywhere close to these. It'd be at the bottom end of this range. I've applied $11 a square foot for the sake of applying a market rent to an office building. I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the next page of my brief, which is the top of 13. We've been talking about vacancy of this property and the allowance provided. If I look at this chart, the property since 2013 has exceeded 50% vacant. It ranged between 90 to 100% vacant from 2018 to 2023. I just maybe would like to take everyone down to the appendix of my brief at this point and go starting at page 25 if we could. I inspected this property yesterday via FaceTime with a representative of the owner. These are pictures here from an inspection that was conducted in 2021. And the inspection yesterday, nothing has changed. The floors still look the same. So if you're looking through these photos, you'll see on page, let's go to 26, starting at the bottom of 26 and downward, that's a typical floor of this building. So they all look the same, not to bombard everyone with 20 pictures of these. Every floor from second and up looks the same. And then on page 29, I included a picture of the previously tenanted Boyd Medical Clinic. And that's the only floor that would differ, and it still looks the same. So I'll head back up, but I just, for context, wanted to provide pictures of what this asset we're talking about looks like. So in terms of shortfall, I've applied $8 a square foot. The 3% non-recoverable, in dealing with a property that's this vacant, that's in this shape, that has the limitations of being a heritage property, I chose to, make this adjustment on the vacancy allowance, and through the cap rate at the top end of the range at an 8.75, and my reconciliation of value is on page 15 for 3,330,000 rounded downward. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
Thank you, Mr. Harden. So I'd like you to go on page 23 of the presentation.
23?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm there.
So this is an income and expense mailer filled out by one of the property agents, I guess.
Yep.
And when we are looking at the expenses, the first one expenses property management and administration for $12,000.
Yep.
But looking at the condition, do you think the property management and administration expense is accurate here? Or is it actually, if the property can't be leased out, so what expense is it?
Yeah, so I don't know the itemized inclusions in that, but one thing I would say is that if you're hiring a professional property manager, you have a property like this that's, I would say there's potentially security risks to people breaking in. There's potentially costs that come. I mean, not even potentially. There's costs that come with owning an asset like this and having it sit still. Like, if you look, the last two assessment cycles, this property was valued at 7 and 8 million and dropped substantially. One through a board order and one through an agreement with the city. The value's gone back up here. And an interesting note is that the expenses that the owner incurs while dealing with this type of property can be substantial. So in terms of itemizing that charge at 12,000, I couldn't. But I could think of several things that would cost the owner, in terms of engaging a professional property manager. So.
Okay, and then you also listed for security reasons. I see another expense for security there, right? So
Sure. Yeah, and that's to your point. That's correct, and it could be just simply like dealing with the property. From an administrative standpoint, I understand that some people pay collect the tax bills. There's services like that, and I couldn't speak to that 12,000. But you're right, there is a separate itemized security note there, so that one would be held out separate. But yeah.
And then they have another one for wages, benefits there, and maintenance supplies for $32,000. So, so my question here is like, since the property is all at its shelf life, are these expenses?
So again, I can't speak to the individual itemized cost, but I will say something like this is in my experience, owners who own, let's say, 5 or 6 properties in their portfolio and engage a management company or own a management company that manages them, they might have a salary for an employee that takes care of, let's say, 7 buildings. And what they might do is allocate that salary out over the properties in their portfolio. And generalized costs that come with managing those assets that span across. So whether or not, you might not have a property manager working one property. So some of these costs might go across multiple. It would be, and that, again, that does not come from, I don't know that to be fact. I would just state that in my experience, that's something that can be done.
Okay, that should be over. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Seelan, questions?
Sure. Just clarify the actual leasable space. It was brought up that there's a difference, and can you tell us why your leasable space is different?
Mr. Chair, I'm working with the leasable space reported by the owner in their income and expense mailer. So if you look on page 24 of my brief, you'll see they have it listed there at 75.7. I think it might be difficult to pinpoint, certainly when you're counting leasable area, vertical protrusions, interior walls, now that's down, I'm sure that's a moving target. So sorry, I can't provide more context on that, but I would say that's where my figure came from.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Whitbread, questions?
No, I'm fine on this. Thanks.
Okay, so just in terms of this. It's 9 stories and 11,310 square feet per floor. Is that correct?
Let me just review a typical floor plate here. I don't know if I have that information in front of me, but. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, could I actually provide one more bit of context to a prior question that I just saw while I was looking at my notes here? Would that
Okay,
be okay?
sure.
This building in 2020 and 2021, when they were stripping parts of it down, they found asbestos, and there was a significant asbestos removal that went floor to floor. So I just wanted to note that those costs would have been absorbed, over that time period there and remediated. So, but in terms of that floor plate, Mr. Chair, I do not have that typical floor plate in front of me.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that then. Summation, Mr. Assessor.
I don't have any submissions or contributions.
Okay, Mr. Applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I will. So in summary here, this is a building that's truly at the end of its economic life, just like the prior one presented on. I think the city has kind of said the 5 rental comparables provided not really relevant to the subject property as of an April 1st, 2023 valuation date. And the property's got this grade 3 heritage designation on it that has limitations. This property is ranged from 93 to 100% vacant the last 6 years, leading to the valuation date, or 5 years anyway. I think what's happened here is that the model has done its best to put an income valuation on this property, but it hasn't contemplated the property specific concerns. I would ask the board to look at those images. There is no permits taken out to date, and I would ask them to strongly consider a shell value, as has been done in the last 2 cycles. And yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. We will do 210 Pacific Avenue now, and then we'll have a short break after that. So on 210 Pacific Avenue, Mr. Assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Harlan. File number 24-2304, roll number 130-714-26000, property address 210 Pacific Avenue. Property owner Jara J. Jeffrey. The 2025 assessed value based on April 1, 2023 is $1,021,000. It's currently used as a medical clinic. Moving on to page 2 and 3, we have some photographs of the subject property. It's located at Main and Pacific. Moving on to page 4, we have a recent sale of the subject property for 2017. It's a non-bona sale. It's a transfer of power of sale, and it's not included for analysis. Moving on to page 6, we have an income approach. We have a net rent of $12.95. We got the expenses at 3% with a shortfall of $8 per square feet, and had a cap rate of 7.8%. Moving on to page 5, I have some rent comparables, which are again outside the downtown area. But the mean and the median for my rent comparables is around $18. The best comparable, I would say, when comparing to my subject property, would be comparable number 3. It's an old property. Again, just to rewind, there is a typo error for comparable number 2 and 3 and A by B column, where it says 502, it's 1972. That's the year built for those properties. And my best comparable is comparable number 3, which is built in 1972, has an approximately same area of 7,000 square feet, leased out at $30 square feet. Now, I was looking at some of the permits that were pulled prior to the reference date. The permits were for HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and interior alterations, which costed around $200,000. And all the work was closed before April 1, 2023. I also submitted a rebuttal submission for this property, and I was told to talk about that once the applicant has presented their information. So now I would like to conclude my presentation for 2025 assessment value of $1,021,000. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Questions, Mr. Applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so just to confirm again, this is a model generated value presented.
Yes, Mr. Applicant.
Again, are you aware that all of the deals, the lease deals included on page 5 of your brief are older lease deals?
Yes, Mr. Applicant.
So you did not review newer lease deals in the immediate vicinity for other tenancy types?
There were, like discussed earlier, we don't have so many medical centers in the downtown area, so it's difficult to find medical centers in downtown for comparing it to a subject property.
Did you contemplate other tenancy types that might be comparable?
No, because my main focus is on the medical center. Since this is used as a medical center, it's a medical center property. But most of my leases have the same characteristics. It's on a busy route, it has a bus route, it has a parking available, and most of my comparables are from the same time.
In your opinion, there's value in searching for old lease deals, not in the immediate vicinity, to prioritize the same tenancy type?
No, in my opinion, I have searched for the comparables for the same type use within the same area type with the same area size. And yeah, I have to increase the proximity for my search because I didn't have the good comparables in my downtown area.
So I think what you're saying is you agree with that statement. You're prioritizing medical office tenancies. You'd go to old lease deals, you'd expand vicinity before you'd review other tenancy types. Is that fair?
The old leases were, because we didn't have enough data, that's why we only had to use the old leases. That's the whole reason for that.
So again, I'll just ask you one more time. You prioritized an expanded vicinity and much older lease deals going back to 2013. You prioritize those over newer comparables in the immediate vicinity that might have different tenancy types. Is that a fair statement?
No, I only focused on the medical clinics, which again factored into the old lease list. So my main goal was to find medical clinics.
Yes. Okay. So I think we're just phrasing the same thing in different ways. I'll move on. So what is the primary difference between a medical dental tenancy and any other retail or office tenant?
The medical office are leased out for higher rent rates, can be only used for a certain tenant. When compared to the retail spaces, it can be used by any other tenants or an office space. Medical clinic involves more investments when compared to the retail units.
So in your experience, medical office tenancies and buildings rented by them do not go to other office or retail tenancies once they move out?
They can go.
Okay. So if this was open to the market, let's say, you could contemplate an office or a retail tenancy moving into that space.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's a post-reference material. I know like chairperson already said not to bring that in, but am I able to bring this for one time?
No, well, I would challenge any post-reference information. I don't think it should be included, but I'll leave that to Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we will not consider any post-reference material.
It's actually one of the listings that's currently in the market, so that's the whole reason I wanted to bring it in. For the
Okay, no,
subsequent-
no, we can't consider post-reference material.
Okay,
Thank you.
Just to continue my question here, you just said comparable 3 was your best comp at $13 a square foot. If I'm looking at your income value on page 6, you guys have assigned $18.21 a square foot to the main floor area with standard finish. Would you say that that rent's too high, given that you just said that $13 a square foot comparable
looking
3
at-
was your best comparable?
we are looking at the blended rent here, which is if you divide $90,227 by $6,964, it come at $1,295.
No, because there's basement space in that, right? So you're comparing, you just said a prime tenancy on the 5th level of 400 Tash at $13 a square foot would be comparable to the above grade space that you have valued at $18.21 a square foot. The weighted rents, including a subprime space in the basement, and that wouldn't be comparable to comp 3 there on Tash. Is that correct?
We are only, so when I did my comparisons, we are looking at the total area. And if we look at the substandard basement, it's already reached at $33, it's marked at $3.56.
So
you the blended rents, it comes around $12.95.
Did you include any basements in your rent comparables to create a blended rent study, or?
No, we only have the total area. I don't know.
Okay. So I think, again, my rents, I think, are down closer towards that. I kind of agree that that $13 rent figure is probably the closest thing you have to, you know, what the value should be on that main area at $18, but I'll move on from that as well. So just in continuing on with this, are you aware that there's a property on this docket, is 218 Regent, that was a medical office tenancy that's recently converted to a cannabis store? Is that?
Are we getting a little far afield here?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I'll let me rephrase, and if you don't think the question is valid, I'll move on from it. Is that a fair?
Sure.
So I just to say again, in contemplating comparable rents and comparable market leases, I guess you're saying that it's not fair to look at comps in the immediate vicinity of other market leases for retail and office ground floor space, and you should prioritize these medical tenancies. I guess in this docket, we're seeing that, you know, the life after these medical office tenancies is not another medical and office tenancy. In many cases, they're being converted or are leasing to other asset types. Do you stand by that decision to only look at these older comparables in a broad city study?
For me, I will always look at the comparables for the properties that they are being used as. So if they are being used as a medical center, I'll look all the comparables for the medical centers.
Okay.
I'll stand by that.
Thank you. And then last one here, again, comparable 5 on page 21. It's the one at Lorimer. If you're looking at page 21, just visually this to the subject property, do you think this is a strong comparable and suitable comparable for valuation?
The best comparable for my subject property, as per me, is comparable number 3.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
Well, I'll pursue that last point. It was my question that as I look at the visuals on your comparables, Mr. Ratton, I can't see any comparison visually to your subject property. Would you agree that they're far superior looking buildings?
I would say they are far superior, but due to the shortage of the comparables in the downtown area, we had to increase our area. We had to look for the comparables outside downtown. And downtown properties didn't have the comparables for us.
Okay, so that's your evidence. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Seelan.
Just on that question, what is your best comparable based on, I think you have 4 comparables here.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning, my best comparable was based on the age of the building, which is so 400 Tache is 1972 year build. The subject property is 1986 year built. It is on BC Road. It has more traffic. The lease is 5 years old, which ended in like 2020. And it's leased out at $13. We have the subject property at 6,000 area, which is leased out at $12.95 if we do the blended rate. So that's why I chose comparable number 3 as the best comparable.
Just a second. Okay, that's, the pictures are on page 15. And the pictures are on 15 for that
Yeah.
comparable. Yes,
Yes.
okay, thanks. Have you inspected this location on Pacific?
Not on the Pacific, but I inspected the comparable number 15 for sure. The comparable on page 15, I inspected that one, but not the subject property.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, now again, there's a difference in the rentable area here. I notice if we look at your page 10, it's saying total leasable area of 6964. Is that where you've got your value, your figure from?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'll check with the applicant on his leasable area when time comes. So, Mr. Applicant, you can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, subject property is a single-story medical office building built in 1986. Subject property is a site area of 7,547 square feet with a leasable area of approximately 6,964 square feet. Current assessment is $1,021,000 commercial classification. I've set aside the cost and sales comparison approach to focus in on the income. My rental inputs start on page 11. And I prioritized vicinity. To me, it's important that, what you consider if this space was vacant, which some of it is, and you would go to the open market and you would try and attract a tenant, and tenancy type does not supersede obviously what the market pay. And these are similar comparables. Some of them are built in similar range. Some of them are a little older. Some of them are a little newer, but the $13 per square foot here I feel is fair. To be honest with you, Mr. Chair, based on what I just heard from the city, their best comparable was in line with that $13. So I don't think that's a highly contentious point. I've reviewed basement tenancies, 4 of them here. Comparable 4 is a major 4 bank and a signed lease deal that actually broke out basement space, which is tough because most times they don't. It's either included in the prime rent and it's tough to break out a value for that space. So $6 a square foot on that. And then moving on to my vacancy rate, I applied 5.5%, which is in line with the assessment authority. $8 a square foot in shortfall, again in line with the assessment authority. 3% effective, a 3% non-recoverable, which is in line with the assessment authority. And then I reviewed a range of retail and office cap rates sales. And in this case, the city had applied a 7.80, and that was right in line with the range I was looking at. So I made no changes to that figure either. My reconciliation of value is on page 13, and it is 758,000 rounded down. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
No, I don't.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread, questions?
Not to steal your thunder, Mr. Chair, but my first question was about square footage as well.
Okay.
I'll proceed. Maybe you'll have additional ones. So I see a differential of about 3,040 square feet between your number at 6620. But then in your presentation, you used the number 6964. But on your reconciliation, you have 6620. Can you clarify for us?
Yes, so the discrepancy in there would be, again, similar to the prior one. When you've got different tenancies moving in and out, you've got those vertical protrusions and interior walls. And I guess active remeasure would cause that discrepancy. But in my report, which is in line with, I believe, what's been done historically on this property, the 4,000 square feet of above grade space and the basement area at 2620 is what I used and what I understand to be the leasable area at the subject property.
So you're coming up with 62,620.
Oh, sorry, 6620. It's on page
620.
on page 13 of my brief at the top there. You'll see the breakdown between the main floor tenancy and then the unit I indicated as B for basement 2620.
That's $6. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you mind if I just take a minute? I want to go back to the assessor's valuation. Did they not use a much lower rate for the basement?
They did. I believe they had 394. Is that correct?
356, I think.
356. Okay, 356.
But then 1821 and 22 for the standard finish, which would be the above grade, I imagine.
Correct. And I think, Mr. Chair, that's just a I think it's tough to find basement rental inputs for both parties, to be blunt. For me, the primary concern here is that rent applied to the above grade space at $18. Based on the study the assessor put forward and the study I put forward, I think it's a much stronger indication at 13. So.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay. Mr. Seelan?
Have you inspected this location?
I was not able to inspect the property, no.
No? Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, and I have Mr. Whitbread has focused on my questions regarding the square footage. Everything else is pretty much the same other than the square footage and the rental rate. All right, so I have no questions that haven't been asked and answered. So thank you very much for your presentations. We'll take a break until oh, do you wish summation? Yes, sorry, you had mentioned
no.
summation.
Sorry, not the submissions, but I had submitted my rebuttal evidence for the subject property for this property.
Rebuttal evidence, yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
If everybody can open the rebuttal evidence, and I was actually.
I don't know if I received a copy. Sorry, before you continue.
Sorry, I
Have
just
you-
sent it to you by email. It should be arriving shortly there.
Okay.
And then I have put it in the SharePoint file as well. If you're not able to see it, you can try refreshing.
Okay, let me just see.
It'll be under item 4.
Item 4 yesterday at 11:02, is it?
Yes, yep.
Okay,
Just getting there.
Yeah, if I could have a minute. I still haven't received my copy, so I ask for a minute.
sure.
Okay, I have the file open. I would
Okay.
like to maybe ask a question of the board here, and I'm noting this document is dated November 20th, 2024. Or is that's just the hearing date? When was this listing put up? Could I ask the assessor that? Do you know when this because I think this is a current listing.
This is a current listing, yes. I don't know.
Is that post-reference material, Mr. Chair?
It says
Um,
line 3.
Yep. That is true. It's giving a current listing. I guess we should briefly go in camera and then discuss whether this is indeed allowable evidence.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
It's of the assessor. He's presenting this rebuttal. Does he know, do you know the date this listing went up?
I do not remember it off my head. And the rebuttal was not submitted to talk about the listing here. The rebuttal was only submitted to show the pictures of the interior alterations and mentioning that it could be leased out at $20 per square feet. It's not about like the sale value of the listing.
That's an advertising figure, and also that would be post reference. If this listing, I think, is current. I think this is up currently. I would ask the board to deliberate to see if this should be included, in my opinion. So
Agreed, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take a brief break and we'll consider whether to allow this evidence in or not.
Mr. Trezor, Paige, I'll just stick you in the living room here just for a moment.
Sure.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Welcome back. The board has considered whether to allow this rebuttal evidence, and we're going to deny allowing it. The pictures may be of the physical asset as it exists today, but the text is highly prejudicial, and the text is no doubt is post-reference material, and so we're going to disallow the submission of this evidence. So, is there anything else you wish to conclude with, Mr. Assessor?
No.
Okay,
Could I request summary before the break, Mr. Chair?
absolutely.
Thank you. So I would just go back to say we've heard the assessor's material. He highlighted comparable 3 as the strongest comp at $13 a square foot. I would reiterate again that I don't think it's a strong comparable analysis that he's put forward. I would lend more strength to the current analysis of lease deals in the immediate vicinity provided by myself at $13 a square foot. However, it does dovetail into the conclusion of $13 a square foot. He put his strongest comparable on. And I think that should be the rent for the prime space. It's above grade. And the rest is, mostly not in dispute. So thank you for your time. And that concludes my summary.
Okay, thank you. And so now we'll take a short break until 10:35. So thank you for that. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. Our next property is 210 Main Street. So you can begin, Mr. Assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. File number 24-1765, roll number 110-313-25000, property address 2110 Main Street. Property owner LS Properties, 2110 Main Street BT Limited. 2025 assessment value based on a reference date of April 1, 2023 is $3,210,000. It's a medical office building. Page 2 and 3 consist of some aerial photographs of a subject property. Page 4 to page 6 consists of the leases, rent roll carried out by the property manager. On page 8, we have the income approach used to assess the property value. We have 19,907 square feet of leasable area with net operating with a potential rent of $273,000. We gave them a vacancy loss of 5.5% with an expense rate at 3% and a shortfall at $8. We kept the overall cap rate of 7.55%, which brings the estimated value at $3,210,000. The property has been facing a vacancy over a few previous years. So we capped the vacancy loss at 5.5 and increased the cap rate at 7.55 to account for those factors. On page 5, On page 7, I have some of the rent comparables. Again, these comparables are all around the city. The mean and the median for my comparables comes around like $17. But the subject property is assessed at a rate of $13.76. So to conclude, I would confirm the board to confirm the 2025 assessment board value of $3,210,000. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. So first, I'll just confirm with you again, the value presented today is a model generated value. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
I know, sorry, this has been asked and answered, but I will continue on because the analysis is, I guess, just slightly different for each of these properties. So the lease deals on page 5 of your brief are all older leases. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you review any newer leases in the immediate vicinity?
No, I couldn't.
Did you contemplate the subject property leases?
Sorry, I didn't get it. Can you repeat the question, please?
Sorry, yeah, did you contemplate the leases that exist in the subject property in determining your value for the subject?
Yes, I actually read through some of the leases when I went through the rent agreements. Yeah.
Okay. You've used a variety of different asset types and different locations in the city of Winnipeg. Did you make any adjustments to those rents based on the assets or the locations that they're in?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
So it's basically from the rent agreements that we got.
Okay, thank you. And so then I'd like to draw all of our attention, I guess, to just page 26 again. This is comparable 5, 2077 Pembina Highway. We've got here a regional anchored retail asset, and this is an inline unit here. And do you think this comp is fit for comparability to the subject property, in your opinion?
If we go back to page 7, where I have the list of my comparables, you can see that the 2077 Pembina Highway, the actual year built for this property type was 1986.
Yep.
But there could be chances that there were some renovations done for the tenant when they moved in, which I didn't look into.
I think typically an asset like that would be built up over phases. So like that pad that retail is built out on, like maybe the original buildings were built, like you said, was it 1986, and then as years go on, yeah, okay. So
and my subject property was an effective year build of 1975. So that was kept in mind that any of the properties that I include in my comparisons should be actually year built around that time phase.
Okay, so one thing that I've been sort of getting at on all these properties, and I guess I'll just do it here to show you an example, is for me, when I look at your rent comparables, I see a range of $9 to $24.50. And when I go through the pictures of all of the rent comparables, they're coming from a variety of assets, right? You have single tenanted properties, you have small old medical office, you have high-rise medical office, new office, stuff in retail anchored facilities. And I think that's speaking to the spread in your rents. Do you kind of agree that there is a significant spread there? And do you think the type of properties that these tenancies are in is factoring into these rents?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. So you had mentioned that the subject property had vacancy. Are you aware that the vacancy ranges between 11.27% to 20.38% from 2016 to 2023?
Yes, I looked into it. Yes.
You had mentioned that the 5.5% vacancy that you guys had applied is above the model generated one. Can I just confirm that with you? Are you saying that a 5.5% vacancy adjustment was contemplating the vacancy ranging between 11 and call it 20%?
No, I never mentioned that we changed the vacancy what was brought up by the model. So it's like 5.5 was a model generated vacancy, which is given every year to build up to take into consideration that there is kind of like 11% vacancy, actual vacancy in the building.
Okay, so sorry, I misheard you because I thought you had said that the 5.5% was you guys taking into consideration the subject property's actual vacancy. So that's maybe I misheard you. So I apologize. So now I'd like us to go to page 15 of your brief. It's the subject property income and expense statement. And the bottom line there, I see the net income reported is 169,000. Are you concerned that the 242,000 that you've applied in 15, is it, sorry, let me just look up what page that is. Page, sorry, my mouse isn't working. Page 9 of your brief. Your value put forward has a net operating income of 242,389 compared to the actual NOI at 169,639. Do you think that the vacancy and loss of income for a lot of that space has been fully contemplated if there's such a wide delta between those two figures?
So what I basically know, what my opinion would be that 5.5 vacancy loss that we gave as per year, right? And the 11% that has been going on could change. It can vary, right? So
Sure.
so we only considered we gave it as a 5.5% vacancy. And as per the model, it's kind of fair because they kept it into a sample size of that kind of properties. And we also applied a cap rate of 7.55% to take into the risk factor.
So do you think if you were a buyer at April 1st, 2023, and you look down at the subject property vacancy, you said, okay, it's been 15, 20, 16, 11.5% vacant. Do you think it's fair to say that if you were buying this property and you were doing your own numbers, you would use something higher than 5.5% to sort of build your model out to run your asset? Is that fair?
I would think of, yes. I would think of.
Sorry, I missed that. I apologize.
Yes, I would think that of. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And that's the end of my questions.
Okay, Mr. Seelan, questions?
Yes, have you inspected this location?
No, I haven't inspected this property.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread?
Just looking at the property, the ratio at 5.14, would you agree that it would be impossible to assess any of this as excess or surplus land? I know it's a large, weird shaped property. It wouldn't make sense to have excess or surplus land on this, would it?
I don't think so.
Just given the configuration?
I actually haven't looked at that perspective for this property, so I couldn't confirm that, but I don't think so. There should be an excess land or surplus land associated to it.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, just for full disclosure here, I have been in this building. Podiatrist my wife goes to is in this building, so I'm somewhat familiar with it. But I didn't even know it was an L-shaped lot like it shows. Okay, so again, we get a difference in a rentable area. In this case, the applicant is a little higher in the city. Again, you're taking your rentable area from the mailers, are you?
We basically take it from the plans that are submitted during any alterations that happen, or if there is like a floor plan that was submitted during the build time, or if there is any updated plans. And then if we find some kind of discrepancies between our area, then we reach back to the mailers and make a judgment out of there.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
I could ask one just on that point, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
If I look at the mailer on page 12, the owner has told you it's 20,951 total leasable square feet. which is different than yours by about 1,000 square feet. It looks like 1,073. Can you account for that difference then if you go by the mailers?
So the 20,951 to 19,907 square feet, we will have to like go through each and every premise space there and make sure the numbers are accurate. Sometimes what happen is when filling out the income and expense mailer, we have seen in the past the property owners or managers do not fill out the right numbers. So they have a typo error because of which the number on the above changes. The number which we have on our files come from the initial original floor plans that are submitted to the city during the time of construction.
So if I go to the next page, which is I've had to blow it up so big to read it. It's the lease properties. It too comes to 20,951, which is still 1,000 over your number.
Yes, like I was mentioning, so it's just a total of all the leasable spaces, right? So let's say if the spaces have been adjusted by 100 square feet and they have like 10 units there, it's gonna increase the area by 1,000 square feet originally.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. So I guess, Mr. Agent, you can begin your presentation then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a two-story medical office building built in 1965. Subject property has a site area of 14,033, a bit of an odd configuration, as was pointed out previously. It's multi-tenanted with I guess a leasable area of 20,983 per our records. The current assessment is $3,210,000 in the commercial class. Like the previous properties, I've set aside the direct comparison approach and the cost approach and focusing in on my income. It starts there at mid-page 10, but I'll focus in on 11. The subject property has a number of leases that have signed and renewed during what I would consider to be a strong period for an April 1st, 2023 value. I applied $12 to some of the upper floor units and $12.50 to one of the smaller ones. And that's based on, units 209, 211. They're signing for $11.50 and $12.50, February 20, October 21. Then you've got on the ground floor, unit 110, Dr. Terry Babick has signed a deal right there at October 22 at $15 a square foot. I imputed that rent for assessment purposes to the vacant units or the units that did not have a rent indicated on the ground floor. Next, I moved to my vacancy allowance study. I looked at this property for a number of years, 16 to 23. This property, as well as a few of the others we've looked at today, I think you can say there's a bit of a softer market for this tenancy type, and this is experiencing long-lasting vacancy. In my evaluation, I've looked at the average vacancy over the last 5 years. Let's say you're you could look at it over different periods, but if you're holding this asset or you're looking to buy it as of April 1st, 2023, I don't think 11.5% is unreasonable given what this property's experienced. So continuing down, I've applied a $10 per square foot shortfall allowance. It's up $2 a square foot, and the reason for that is substantial vacancy. The subject is underperforming and under recovering in line with the actual performance of the subject property. I've applied a 3% non-recoverable, which is in line with the current assessed value. And then in my review of the capitalization rates, I've looked at a range of between 7 and 8% from our study. The assessment authority has 7.55 on it, which is right in the middle of that range. So I've used that figure in my reconciliation of value, which should be found here on page 14. And my revised value is 2,794,000 rounded downward, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions, Mr. Assessor?
No,
Okay, Mr. Whitbread, questions?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Salin?
Have inspected this property.
I have not, Mr. Chair.
Haven't. Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We will move to
Could I,
move
could I
east to-
provide summary, or sorry, did
Oh,
you?
sure, if you,
Yeah.
Mr. Assessor, first of all, do you wish summary on this?
no.
Okay, summation, Mr. Applicant.
Thank you. So in summary, the city supplied 13 rental comparables, all of which I think the dates are, irrelevant in my very conservative in our application of this vacancy. In our revised value, our NOI is at 210,948. And again, I would draw focus there to that document supplied by both me and the assessor. The actual performance of the subject property is at 169,639. So it is undershooting that. That concludes my summary. Thank you so much.
Okay, in fairness, though, that 169 includes mortgage costs and all those sort of things, which are not allowable expenses.
Sure. There is some expenses you could net out, but in terms of the city's value is 80,000, I think, in excess of that. So
Yeah, and the rental values are, the gross rental values are almost identical. So, okay, we will move to 218 Regent. And let me just again open the files.
Oh, and Mr. Chair, actually, could I just confirm that, if I may just say that in that net income presented in that file, I do not believe mortgage interest is included in that. There's a middle column there. If you look on page 15 of the assessor's brief, it's pretty clear cut. There's actually a middle column that's netting those figures out. So if you're looking at the far right column where the 169,639 is totaled, all of those leasing commissions, amortization, mortgage interest would be netted out. So that figure is net of those charges.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a closer look at it.
Thank you.
218 Regent Avenue. Mr. Assessor, you can begin.
So file number 242185, roll number is 0901047585. Address is 218 Regent Avenue West. Owner is 218 Regent West Limited. So our assessment is based on April 1st, 2023, and the assessed value of 2025 is 380,000. And the subject property has a land area of 5,719 square feet. And the gross floor area is 1,960 square feet, with the leasable area is 1,762. It has actual year built is 1970, and the effective year built is also the same. On the page number 2, we have the pictures of the subject property. And the subject property is located front facing on the Regent Avenue. On the page number 4, we can see the subject property has a recent sale, but it's not included in the analysis because it is the dollar sale. In the page number 5, I have the rent comparables. So out of my 5 rent comparable, I can say the comparable number 3 is the best comparable based on its leasable area is 1,569 square feet, and the net rent is $14. Compared to the subject property has a leasable area of 1,762 square feet on the page number 6, and the rent is $14.46 square feet. If we move on to the income and expense mailer at page number 11, it has the tenant information provided, and the leasable area is 1753, and according to their rent, I calculated, they mentioned that the subject is leased at $15 per square foot. So based on income and expense mailer, we assess the property at 1446, which is fair. And page number 6, we have the income approach, where the vacancy loss is 5.50% and the expense is at 3%, and the shortfall is at $8 per square foot. And the overall capitalization rate is 5.95%. So the page number 7 has a further breakdown of the income value summary. And the page number 12 to page number 920, I have the pictures of the rent comparable. So by the end of my presentation, I will say the assessed value of 380,000 is a fair according to us.
Okay, questions, Mr. Applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the value presented today is a model generated value, is that correct?
Yes,
You provided rent comparables for medical and dental offices. In your review, did you note that the tenant is a cannabis shop?
yes, I noticed that. But as our property, the subject property is classified as a medical office clinic, so that's why I only focused to find the rent comparable of the office medical building.
Do you think it's classified as a medical office clinic because the prior tenant was a pharmacy?
Yes,
Okay. So do you think that this conclusion would be that other tenancy types, can move into these vacant spaces that are non-medical? Is that a fair
Yes.
conclusion? Okay.
yes.
Do you think the valuation that the model generated is relevant? Do you think that it's relevant given the fact that if you guys updated the PUC code, the model might have changed the value?
That's what I'm not 100% sure how the value changed by the PUC code, but according to current condition, this property has a rent of $14.46, and right now we can say that it can go higher if it's updated, because we can see that previously it is a medical office building. And now if it's moved to retail, then of course the retail shop has a more, net operating income compared to the medical pharmacy in that.
Do you think that's true, given the fact that the model put 1450 square foot on this building and the actual rent is $15? Like, aren't those pretty close?
Yeah, it is pretty close, not much difference.
Do you think that the capitalization rate might have changed if you put this in the retail?
So if we go to the table of capitalization rate of the page number 8, so according to the current tenant, if it is the retail store, the city has a regional retail cap rate between 585 to 680. According to the current model generated is 5.95, which is falling in the low end of our retail category of the city of Winnipeg, I can say.
Do you think that this standalone cannabis shop is comparable to a regional retail asset, in your opinion?
Can you please repeat the question? I missed it somewhere.
So you just quoted on page 8, is this page 8? Yeah, your chart, your capitalization rate chart. I think you just quoted a range of 5.85 to 6.8. The line is under retail. You just said, I think it's regional. A regional shopping center would represent a large, anchored, sophisticated, asset at the top end of the market. I'm just wondering, are you suggesting that this property at a 5.95 cap, a standalone cannabis shop, should be at the bottom of the range? Not to say that I agree with that range. I think it's low because, sorry, let's get one question out of the way here. Do you think that this standalone store is comparable to the regional line of that model? Is that what you're saying?
So retail cap rate is falls between 585 to I can say 6.80, which is nearly the 7%.
So that line is regional shopping centers. Like that'd be like a big sophisticated asset. Would you not say that this might be more comparable to a regional strip?
So if we
Or sorry, not regional, a strip, a retail strip, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna support her. So if we even look at so let's focus on the retail cap rates, not on the regional power or strip. If we look at the comparisons, the range for the cap rate, it starts from 5.60 to 7% of the cap rate.
Yep.
Right now, it's being at a medical clinic, it's at like 5.95%. We couldn't justify right now what the cap rate will be if we switch it over to the retail model.
But when you
Sure.
guys submitted your report for this property, you had the opportunity to review the value as the asset was at the valuation date. Is that not a fair statement? This tenant's been in since 2021.
Yes, that's true, and that is something we missed, but again, the cap rate still falls between the range of the retail section.
So I'll get to that. Your study says it's supported by the broker's reports. The broker's reports across retail are ranging from 6 to 7.5. Given that you've put a 5.95% on this, do you think that it might be a bold statement to say an asset like a standalone cannabis shop would be at the high end, or I guess in this case, the low end of risk profile and be a blue chip in an owner's portfolio? I would say that's excessive. So I guess, do you think it should be at the low end of the range?
According to the model right now, yes, but again, like I stated before, we do not know once we convert it to the retail shop, what will be the cap rate. So I couldn't comment on that right now.
Okay, I just to get it, like, to be clear on my point is that, you know, this is an older standalone cannabis shop, and I think it's been valued as a medical office. I think the model has spit out that value, and I think there's an error in there, and I think this cap rate is too aggressive. So thank you. That concludes that line of questioning. I'll continue onward here. Actually, I think that's great for me. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread, questions?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Seelan?
Have you inspected this location?
So I did not, but one of our valuation field assistant did it in 2021 when the new tenants moved, according to the system rules.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that gives me a question then. If the city had inspected it with the new tenant, why did they not change the classification or the puck code at that time?
Yeah, that's what I also noted it. So we will need to have a look on it after I went back to the office.
Okay, thank you very much then. Mr. Applicant, you can begin.
Thank you. So subject property is a single tenanted retail property. Subject property is a site area of 5719, and it's improved with a single tenanted cannabis retailer with a leasable area of 1674. As noted, I guess, in the previous line of questioning, there was a previous pharmacy tenant in there with a non-arm's length deal. It's my understanding in discussions with the owner that the deal with the joint cannabis as of 2021 is arm's length. The current assessment is $380,000 in the commercial classification. I've set aside the cost approach and sales comparison approach and focused on my income. This property was pretty straightforward in my mind. We had an arm's length lease deal signed at $15 a square foot, which is the best indicator of market value leading up to the valuation date. I looked at some comparables at the top of page 13. There's a spread of them there in the immediate vicinity on Regent, just to kind of confirm that, you know, the lease in place is in line with that. If you look at the spread there, there's obviously some outliers, but the meat and potatoes of it is in that range. So I've applied $15 a square foot. I've applied 6% vacancy allowance, which is in line with other retail assets. $8 shortfall per square foot, 3% non-recoverable. And then for this property here, I put a 7.25% cap on it. And my value there on the bottom of page 15 is $320,000 rounded down. And I'll just make the following commentary that, you know, this property should have been valued as retail. The cap rate on it is far too aggressive for what the asset actually is. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, questions, Mr. or Madam Assessor?
Yes, I do have it. So the applicant's brief, page number 2, and also please refer to the page number 15. It has a 2 leasable areas, so I just want to make sure which one is the correct one he's referring.
Sorry, you said page number 2. So 1762 is the figure that I've used in my reconciliation of value based on the new tenant.
Okay,
So I that might have been a historical figure, so my apologies, but 1762 is what we were working with.
that makes sense. And also I want to know from you, why your vacancy loss is at 6%.
In line with other retail assets. This modeled value you guys have put forward is a medical dental office, and I reviewed other retail assets, and that's in line with the market vacancy for those.
And the page number 14, you use the cap rate of 7.25% for this property. So I just want to know more about what kind of the risk factor you're taking into consideration.
Okay, perfect. Lots of stuff. So first, in leading up from the prior assessment cycle, we've got a almost 4.5% basis increase in the Bank of Canada borrowing rate. We've got a market that's substantially inferior to that in terms of a borrowing money sort of atmosphere. As we know, that rate is a prime factor in the calculation of a capitalization rate. This is retail. We all know what's happened to retail in the last 10 years. In our study that's attached in supplement, there's a retail capitalization rate study. We've looked at the sales of these properties. Now, it's a little difficult because the sales of standalone properties are tough to typically drive a capitalization rate. So many of those are multi-tenanted. I looked at the standard range. I didn't put this as non-investment grade. So I made a selection through the range, and I arrived at 7.25%.
Yeah, fair enough. That's all my questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Seelan, questions?
Sure, have you inspected this location?
I have not, Mr. Chair.
Okay, sorry. Tough question. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. That's all my questions.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread?
I have nothing, thank you.
Right, and I have no questions that haven't been asked and answered previously. So we will move on to our
Could I get a brief summary, Mr. Chair?
okay.
I'll be brief.
All right. First, I'll ask the assessor. Do you wish a summary?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, you go ahead with your summary then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In summary, this property appears to have been incorrectly classified as it was put in for assessment for the 2023 assessment period. It's been, I think, further, I guess, the errors continued into today, where the brief and the comparables provided, the model generated cap provided are all from a medical office standpoint. I think assigning a 5.95% cap rate to a standalone single tenanted retail building that was built in 1970 is not in line with what the market indicators are showing for other similar assets. And then I would just say that the arm's length yield, subject property, is the best indicator of market value. And thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. So our last property today is 1462 Regent. So you may begin, Madam Assessor, or whichever one of you is doing this one.
The file number is 242257. The room number is 0900-769-5800. Address is 1462 Regent Avenue West. Owner is Mittal and Sons Limited. Our 2025 assessed value is based on the reference date of April 1st, 2023 is 1,444,000. Subject property is currently medical office clinic. Its actually year built is 1986 with the effective year built is 2015. It has a land area of 13,133 square feet. And the gross floor area is 4,320 square feet, and the leasable area is also same. So on the page number 2, we can see the pictures of the subject property. It is located and the front is facing on the Regent Avenue West. On the page number 4, we can see it has a recent sale, and that sale is included for analysis, and it's arm's length sale between unrelated parties.
Apologies, we seem to have lost our applicant.
Oh, yes, we
Mr.
seem to have,
Sharma, are you still there?
yeah, we seem to have lost him. All right, let's see if we can get him back.
Mr. Charleboy Page, can you hear us? Oh, there you are, perfect.
Sorry, I actually knocked my webcam out, so I apologize. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay,
I was hearing it all, so I apologize for the interruption.
Okay, go ahead, continue then, please.
The page number 5 has my rent comparable. Out of that, I can say my best comparables are comparable number 3 and 4 based on the effective year built, which is 2012 and 2015 compared to the subject property is 2015 effective year built. And it has a kind of near about the same leasable area. Page number 6 has the leasable area is 4,320 square feet, and my comparable is falling in between that. And the rent comparable says that leasable net rent per square feet is ranging from 22.16 for the comparable number 4 and $23 for the comparable number 3. And compared to that, the subject properties falling under that is $21.26 square feet. Based on same size, same leasable area, I will say these are my best comparables. And the page number 6, we have the income approach, which has vacancy loss of 5.50%, expense at 3%, shortfall at $8 per square feet, and the cap rate is 5.70%. And the page number 7 has a further breakdown of the income value summary. And the page number 10, income and expense mailer provided the information that it is the fully owner occupied building. So that we never studied performed for the income and expense mailer. Based on the our system, we can see that there are some permit work happened before the reference date, and they spend $120,000 on the renovations for this particular property to be used for the dental office. So the page number 12 up to page number 22, I have the pictures of the rent comparables. So at the end, I will say that our assessed value of 2025, 1,444,000 is fair. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to confirm again, the value presented today is a model generated value.
Yes, it's true.
So I see the property sold, and you noted it in your presentation, January 5th, 2022. You think this is a strong indicator of market value?
Yes.
Okay. Your lease deals vary in location again, they vary in asset type, vary in start year. There's one of them that's a power center in there again. Do you think that these are the best fit for comparison for this property?
So based on the data available, that's what I found it. And because these comparables, one is on Henderson, one is on Corridon, and they are kind of the same leasable area and the same effective year built, so same kind of depth. So I would say they are the best comparable based on the same size and the same effective year built. And also the net is also approximately same.
Do you worry though that leases starting between 2013 and 2017, the market would be inconsistent with the modern day market? Would that be a fair critique?
I really don't know the answer about that, because that's what leasable information we have it, which I put it in. So
yeah, okay. So I would just suggest that, like, you know, in terms of the world of valuation and real estate holdings, from 13 to current, we've had the global pandemic, the interest rates have gone crashed down and then zoomed up. So it's just be my opinion that, you know, those are materially different. So did you, and then just a follow up, I think you already kind of provided this answer, but did you search the immediate vicinity for comparable leasing information that wasn't medical dental, other retail tenants, other ground floor office, standalone businesses? Did you look at those for rental data?
I just looked the rental data. I never inspected this property to go and check.
Sorry, I mean, did you look at comparable properties, like other comparable properties that were, let's say, standalone retail or standalone office? Did you ever review other leasing information in the immediate area that's maybe newer?
No, I have not checked.
Okay, thank you. So in regards to the capitalization rate on this, could you go with me to page 8 and again point out of this chart, this asset that we're dealing with today, where would you think that the model would pick out of this range? What line are we working with here?
We don't have the particular study for the medical office building to exactly point out that cap rate, because that cap rate is also the system generated cap rate based on the information provided by the income and expense of the comparable properties.
So for discussion purposes, I would surmise that suburban Class B office or retail strip would probably be the closest asset in those broad categories that you've put forward. Would you agree with that statement, sort of broadly speaking?
Yes, that's right. It should be falling under 5.25 to 6.75 office suburban property type class.
Okay. So now specifically with that, you know, I look again, there's a line up above that says, hey, our studies are further bolstered or further supported by these brokerages. That range I'm looking at there is 6 to 8%. If I look at Colliers, CB, and Cushman Wakefield, their floor is 6 and their top end is 8. Does it concern you that in your valuation, again, for this property, you've applied a 5.7%? Does it concern you that you'd be the outlier to Altus study, Collier study, CBRE, and Cushman Wakefield?
No, it doesn't concern us because we have to look at our sample size. That's the studies the other brokers have provided, but as per city study, it should be between 5.25 to 6.75%.
So do you know how many sales were included in the suburban B office study?
No, we do not know about that information.
Okay. So it's tough from my perspective, it's tough to scrutinize, right? Like I've provided both a retail and a office study with my ranges, and certainly for this property, I reviewed that. With your study, I've looked at the 6 to 8% range that the brokers are showing, and I think you guys are the far market outlier there at 5.25%. Do you think that this property, a standalone dentist office, should be at the bottom half of the range again? Just out of curiosity.
We think it should be right in the middle of the office suburban one, which is 5.25 to 6.75. We have 5.70 cap rate based on all the renovations that they did, and being an owner occupied medical center.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, questions, Mr. Whitbread,
I have none, thanks.
Mr. Salin.
I'm sorry, did I hear you say there was renovations done here?
Sorry, I didn't get the.
I'll repeat. Did I hear that there was renovations done to this property?
Yes, that's right. That is right.
Can you take us through the renovations when they were done?
So the renovations were done. They were done prior to the reference date, and they, as per the permits, they spent around $120,000 in interior alterations.
Do you have any pictures in your brief? Excuse me.
Do not have any pictures in the brief for the interior alterations.
Okay.
Could I ask maybe a follow-up to that?
Go ahead.
Are you aware of what percentage of those would be business value and which would be real estate value? Just in terms of, you know what I mean? There's the chairs, there's the fixturing within. Do you know if that permit is speaking to purely real estate value?
Those permits were for electrical, HVAC, and plumbing informations, nothing for like for the chairs or any of those things, because when you pull up the permits, you are only pulling up the permits for electrical, HVAC, and interior, where you're demolishing something for the property. It's not for
Okay,
like.
I will interject here that the board puts no weight to the value of the renovations, other than to as evidence that renovations were done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all my questions.
All right. So you can begin, Mr. Applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subject property is an owner-occupied dental office with an effective age of 2015, according to the city. The property was purchased in May of 2022 for 1.185 million. The subject property has a site area of 13,133 square feet. It's improved with that's the site area, yes, and it's improved with a one-story structure at 4,320 square feet. Current assessment is 1,444,000 in the commercial classification. Like the previous properties, I'm going to set aside cost and the direct comparison and head into the income approach. So I'll start here on the top of page 12. I have some rental inputs. These are office tenancies in the immediate vicinity on Regent Avenue. I looked at sort of properties right in that immediate area on Regent, and I got to a median rental rate of $16.50 a square foot. You can see that in there's comps that range up to $23.50. I've assigned the rent of $21 a square foot, so I went above the measure of central tenancy, given the state of the property. So I picked from near the top of the range at $21. I've applied a 5.5 market vacancy allowance, an $8 a square foot shortfall, 3% non-recoverable, which is in line with the current assessment. And I've reviewed both the office study that I've attached and supplement and the retail study. And in this case, I chose to go to the higher end of the range for us, which is 7%, lower end of the range, sorry, it's the higher quality end of the range at 7%. So if you go down to page 14, my reconciliation of value is there. You can see I used the $21 input as said, 7 cap for a revised value of $1,160,000. That's a revised rate of $268 a square foot, which is quite high. And I've included both for the board's decision making. Is I've tried to find market rents in the immediate vicinity, review the cap rates for other similar assets, and just to fully review whether the subject sale was market at arm's length. I know the city has it that way. We have it that way. Is it an indicator? These two values, my income and the sale, are dovetailing into each other. I think this asset's been overassessed at 1,444, and a value ranging between 1.160 and 1,185 where it's sold is the best indication of market value. Thank you.
All right. Questions, Madam Assessor?
Yes, I do have it on the page number 12. So these are your rent comparable. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to know why your leasable area of the comparables are less than the subject property.
So for me, predominantly, it's important for me to focus in on comps in the immediate vicinity. I think if anything, you would, valuation sort of standards would say that me choosing lower comps would actually end up with a more aggressive rate per square foot than a bigger one. But for me, proximity, market, there's 2 new comps in there, the one in 2011 and the other one with 2000. Those were a priority. So yes, granted, I wish we did have some bigger comps, but given, what's available, these comps were the best indicator of a market rent.
Okay, so will they affect the rent?
Yeah, I just said, I actually think if you're following that logic, the subject property at a larger tenancy would have a lower rate per square foot.
Okay, so also the subject property has the effective year till 2015. But in your rent comparables, I could not able to see any of it close to that. So is that
Yeah, so again, smaller comps, the median rent of this rental range is $16.50, and I applied a $21 a square foot. I made a manual adjustment up, what's that, $4.50 a square foot to account for that. So I think that was a positive move upward.
Okay, so I also want to make sure that where exactly they are located on region, because it's not classified as where exactly for me to make sure the leases are correct. And also if they are like retail space, office, medical or warehouse, it's nothing specified here.
So they're ground floor office and retail mix. They're tenancies of a similar asset to the subject property. If you want, if you give me a brief second, I can provide that for you.
Okay.
I give you the range of addresses, and then that way, you know, you can have sort of broadly speaking where that range was taken from. So just give me 1 second. I will just as commentary, as close to the range as I could find that had new tenancies for other small tenanted buildings on Regent. So bear with me here. The street range is from 500 to 1600, but the bulk of comps 1, 3, and 4 are 701 and 801. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but it's not just important that that information needs to be mentioned prior to the analysis so that we can double check it too.
Sure, and you know what, I appreciate that, and it's it should be available for you guys to review. However, given the analysis you guys put forward, it's so different from mine that you know that sort of compare. We're functionally comparing apples and oranges when you guys look at your study to what I've put forward, right? You guys have gone back to lease deals from 13 to 17 in regional retail facilities. And I just don't find that comparable at all. So anyway, I put a lot of weight on similar assets on Regent in the immediate vicinity for office and ground floor retail spaces. And yep, that's my analysis.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Seelan, questions?
Sure. Have you inspected this location?
I have not inspected this property.
No problems. I see you have a 7% cap rate. Can you explain why your cap rate is that high?
So yeah, and in our review of the market capitalization rates for retail and office, we've provided sort of a range between, you know, we're seeing anywhere between 6.75% up to 8.5%. Now, I know that's kind of a broad spectrum because you've got stuff at the bottom end of the office range in there. But predominantly speaking, with that 7 to 7.5%, we're seeing that increase from, you know, high interest rates. It's shifting that sort of part of the calculation of a capitalization rate up. And then with speaking about my range, of course, so it is higher than the cities. But if you look at the brokers, like I said, for suburban B class B office, they're 6 to 8%, right? So if you're looking at that range, you got to think to yourself, we've got the nice end assets, your like higher end assets of that market at the bottom end, and then you've got sort of these mixed retail and office stuff that I would like to think is in the middle. So for me, this is at the upper middle end of our range at 7%. Some of the properties you've heard on this call you've seen us at the bottom end of the office range, obviously with the Boyd Center and a couple of those up in the 8 and 9. This comes down to the 7, which is in that sort of high standard quality given the age and location of the property. So I hope that wasn't too much, but that's, you know, that's sort of my mindset for the capitalization rate.
Thank you.
No problem.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread.
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
All right, summation, Madam Assessor.
I would like to say that the board to maintain the 2025 assessed value at 1,444,000. That's fair.
Okay, Mr. Applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the 5.7% capitalization rate applied to the subject property is incorrect. It's just, quite frankly, I think it's off of the range that the rest of the market participants are indicating for any asset of this similar quality. And I think you're seeing that it's a nice opportunity where we have subject property sale up to the valuation date at 1,185. I mean, the city's coming in at 1.4, and I think a lot of that has in their valuation has to do with that hyper aggressive capitalization rate. So in summary, I would say on a lot of these properties today, we've seen rental studies, basically the same rental study included by the city, that's old. They're in various asset types, including regional, anchored retail, which I consider to be way stronger than the properties we've heard today, including the subject, the standalone dentist office. And I think sort of just maybe a miss of the mark in terms of capitalization rate on these smaller ones in the fives. That's not what the market is showing. That's not what's happening with increased interest rates. And I would just ask the board to consider both the sale price and the income valuation put forward by Altus that dovetails into that sort of range, 116, 1185. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we've now heard all the properties on today's agenda, so this hearing is now adjourned. So thank you very much for your capable presentations.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
And we'll take a short
Thanks.
break and then come back for our deliberations.